by the time Master Geppetto made Pinocchio, he had already lost a son. This is the first line of Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, and right away it grants him a new role within the classic story. See, in the original book by Carlo Collodi, Geppetto is surprisingly absent. He mostly serves as an object for Pinocchio to reach rather than an actual character. In this adaptation, the character takes on a far more active presence in the story, as Del Toro weaves a new theme about fatherhood and authority into the tale we all know. Right from the beginning, Geppetto is defined by his relationship to his son Carlo. This is what Geppetto values above all else: the quiet and idealized life they shared, the songs he sang him, and the wisdom he gave him. After felling a tree, he tells Carlo that they must replant it and tells him to find a pine cone. But not just any pine cone, it must be perfect and complete to properly sprout another tree. In this way, he successfully raises his son to be mindful of the world around him. The town they live in is happy, cheerful, and kind. Their neighbors greet them warmly. The local priest is patient with the young Carlo. Everything seems perfect. But one night, in one cruel instant, it's all ripped away. The night that a far distant war passes overhead, and on a whim, a bomb is dropped to lighten the load. The night that Carlo found a perfect pine cone, it is all that Geppetto is left of him. Geppetto buries it in place of a body. The town helps him mark a grave. Time passes, but doesn't heal. The church remains broken. The town remains broken from the scars of the Great War, and Geppetto is left broken, driving himself to drink. As a character, he already carries far more weight within the narrative, a sad man unable to accept his tragic loss. No, he refuses to accept it.
Oh, what? My antenna!
I'll make Carlo again.
Geppetto fells the tree that sprouted from Carlo's grave and drags it back to his workshop. Far from the playful whimsy in Walt Disney's version of the tale, this movie depicts Pinocchio's creation as something out of a horror movie. Even the musical cue is titled Geppetto's Creature on the soundtrack, evoking the way Mary Shelley called Frankenstein's monster a creature. Dramatic lightning thunders through the window. The sound design emphasizes the harsh metallic knives. He's drunk. He's not in control of himself. Pinocchio's creation is an expression of both his pain and his helplessness. But this expression doesn't go unheard. The Blue Fairy arrives, a spirit of life who wishes to bring Geppetto joy. So she enlists the nearby cricket Sebastian to guide Pinocchio and bestows the gift of life upon the wooden puppet. And of course this makes Geppetto overjoyed and no, he's horrified.
Good morning, Papa!
Pinocchio is terrifying, but even worse, he's ornery. He breaks things, he climbs all over the walls, he causes a big mess. He's not the quiet, sweet, mindful boy Carlo was, and Geppetto isn't having it.
What is wrong with you?
Papa? I'm sorry.
The sudden vulnerability moves Geppetto's heart, and he realizes this weird little monster that he's created is in fact just a child whose mind is yet uncut and unpolished. And this begins the main conflict of the movie. Geppetto wanted to create Carlo. Instead, he's created Pinocchio. He's not the ideal child that Carlo was, but it isn't due to any genuine mischief or malice. He's eager and enthusiastic, just without any regard for social norms. Unfortunately, this is the worst setting to not be mindful of social norms. Because Pinocchio wanders into town, and we see that things are different from when Geppetto had Carlo. The walls are now marked with Mussolini's face and the mantras of the fascist regime. It's not just socially unacceptable to be outside the norm, it's dangerous. Dangerous for Pinocchio and dangerous for Geppetto. And the danger is embodied in a man known only by his title, Podesta. According to Lester K. Bourne, writing in 1927 for the American Political Science Review, The word podesta is derived from the Latin potestas, translating to power. It was a position prominent in Italy around the high and late medieval period, a local officer in control of civil and criminal matters. However, in 1926, the office of podesta was reintroduced in fascist Italy, and the role became something else. Replacing the mayoral system, a podesta would be appointed to each town by the provincial authorities, a top-down approach to governance. Mussolini's Minister of the Interior, Luigi Ferrazzoni, said the position answers a true need in the nation's present historical moment, that of centralizing power in the hands of a single person who is above party passions, who looks after the observance of the laws, who, in short, answers fully the requirements of a public officer possessing power great enough to silence discords. Thus conceived, the podesta system fits perfectly into the program of the national government for the construction of a state materially or morally strong, simple in organization, rapid in movement, and efficacious in action. No one can see how, other than in the podesta, can one achieve hierarchy, authority, and prestige in the interest of the nation and of the laws. The nation, referred to by the regime as the fatherland. I think you see where I'm going with this. The theme of fatherhood intertwines with a theme about authority, fear, and the virtue of disobedience. Now, this isn't the first time that Guillermo del Toro has talked about this theme in his movies. This isn't the first time that I've talked about this theme in his movies. But this time around, that theme emerges through the contrast between these characters who are foils of one another. Geppetto's paternal desires are at odds with the podesta's paternalistic goals, but not entirely at odds. Because watch what he says to Pinocchio here.
Go warm your feet by the fire. Obey your papa.
That's not just a request for Pinocchio to behave. The word obey is a loaded one in Del Toro's work. Both fathers want their sons to obey, and more specifically, they both want their sons to obediently become what their fathers desire them to be. Geppetto's desire is relatively innocuous. He just wants Pinocchio to become a more ruly child, to become more like the ideal little boy Carlo was. But the podesta's desire is more overtly political.
Look at my boy Candlewick.
Yes.
A model fascist youth.
The podesta exerts power not only over Pinocchio, but also Geppetto. In most iterations of the story, Pinocchio is sent to school because that's what all good boys do. They go to school. But here, the mandate is imposed by the podesta, with a promise of consequences for father and son both if he is not obeyed. And speaking of the son, let's talk about Pinocchio, and elaborate more on how he's changed for this version of the story. In the original book, Pinocchio's first act, before he's even finished being created, is to kick Geppetto in the shins and stick out his tongue at him. He's very ornery, and so Collodi's themes make sense for him to learn. Pinocchio has to become a good, obedient boy. In this adaptation, Pinocchio is unruly, yes, but I wouldn't ever say he's naughty. Instead, he's more naive. Pinocchio is extremely eager and enthusiastic, which is both one of his most endearing traits and one of his greatest weaknesses.
I love it, Papa. I love it, I love it, I love it! What is it? Don't worry, Papa. I'll go to war. It sounds quite fun.
War is not fun. War is not good.
Really, Pinocchio's desire matches that of every child. He wants to be loved. There's a powerful moment, after he's called a monster for being made of wood, where he asks Geppetto why people hate him, but love Jesus, whose effigy is carved from the very same material. And while his nose still grows when he lies, it's noteworthy that the first lie Pinocchio tells is not an attempt to evade trouble, but a simple declaration. I'm a real boy. But he's not. Not yet, anyways. He is an outsider who wants to find acceptance. That is his motivation.
Was he a very good boy, Papa?
Yes, he was.
And you loved him very much?
I did. I do.
Then I will be just like Carlo.
But that's exactly it. Pinocchio is not Carlo. He's very similar, and that seems intentional, with Gregory Mann being cast as both characters. And again, Pinocchio is made from the tree that grew from Carlo's pinecone, creating a strong thematic connection between them. But some of the similarities are uncanny even within the narrative. Pinocchio knows things that Geppetto had told Carlo.
Do not tell lies, or your nose will grow
The more you lie, the more it grows. Is that it?
Yes, that's it.
Pinocchio knows the small personal tune that Geppetto had played for Carlo, appropriating it for a circus act.
You are my shining sun.
My gum, I pop my bubble gum.
That song. How could he know that song?
But in the end, he is still not Carlo, and he never can be. Not in this world. Because Carlo didn't live in the world that the characters live in now. A world where right is wrong and wrong is right.
Then I simply won't go.
But you have to go now. It's the law.
Even when it's something bad?
Collodi's story made it clear that good little boys listen to their parents. They go to school and do as they're told. They work hard. He very explicitly emphasizes the virtue of obedience to his child audience. How can that lesson hold up in a setting when there's a difference between virtue and obedience? And how is Pinocchio supposed to tell the difference? He's confused, he's scared, he doesn't know what to do. He feels like he's failing to be a good son, and then it's all but confirmed to him with a cruel outburst.
You are such a burden.
It wounds Pinocchio deeply, and even Geppetto wakes up the next morning already conciliatory. But Pinocchio's not there. He's run off to join the circus, not because of some lackadaisical disregard for his future, but precisely because he wants to prove himself worthy of his father's love.
And tell him I love him. And I won't be a burden anymore.
Ironically, by doing this, he's exhibiting exactly the virtues the original book extolled, sending all of his earnings to his father. Earnings that he's of course being cheated out of, but the intent is there. By the time Geppetto reaches the fairgrounds, Pinocchio is long gone. As Sebastian the Cricket gives out to him, Geppetto comes to a realization. He's been gifted a second chance at fatherhood, and he has been squandering it. So he sets out to find Pinocchio and make things right. In the meantime, Pinocchio goes on quite his own fantastic journey, having another brush with death. I don't think I'd mentioned this before. Yeah, Pinocchio dies 3 times in this movie. That's not important right now, though. Only to wake up in the clutches of the Podesta. The man is getting his wish, about to forge the puppet into a soldier of the regime. Pinocchio also finds himself with Candlewick again. And you know what? Let's talk about that character, because he is perhaps the most drastically changed in this adaptation. If you'll recall from other iterations of the story, Candlewick, or Lampwick depending on the translation, is the very bad kid who runs off with Pinocchio to Pleasure Island, or in the book, the land of boobies. I am not making that up. But anyways, the book says, and I quote, Candlewick was the laziest and naughtiest boy in the school. That pans out across most adaptations. That's not the Candlewick we see here though, is it? The closest he gets to misbehavior is tricking Pinocchio into setting his feet on fire.
Try to get closer to the fire, to get warm.
But let's remember what happened just before that.
This abnormal boy lacks discipline, but he seems strong, sturdy, made of good Italian pine.
Candlewick is not a bad child. The Podesta is already a menacing enough presence to Pinocchio and Geppetto. Imagine how he must loom large in the mind of his son. That's why Candlewick is so eager to say out loud that he loves war and fighting and all the things that his father commands him to value. But it fails to hide his anxieties. And to comfort him, Pinocchio says aloud the words Sebastian gave him.
Sometimes fathers feel despair, like everybody else. And they say things.
They only think they mean in the moment. But with time, they learn they never really meant it at all.
Perhaps also saying it to himself as much as to Candlewick, trying to spark hope. And you know what? During the war games the next day, Candlewick and Pinocchio both end up tying, declaring a joint victory. Surely Candlewick's father will be proud of him now.
Shoot the puppet.
But Candlewick, in a reversal of the original version of himself, becomes the voice of morality and stands up to his father's cruelty.
All my life, Father, just trying to please you. But I never will. I can say no to you. I can do that. I'm not afraid to say no. Are you?
The man doesn't take it very well. Truth be told, there's a hint of tragedy in the Podesta. In the beginning of the movie, we see him in the city. He had a normal job and a normal life. He even remarked that he saw Geppetto as a model Italian citizen, which does hint at what he would prioritize later on. He even helped Geppetto bury Carlo. They were part of the same community. Cut back to the man he is now, condemning his own son for perceived weakness. holding Geppetto's child at gunpoint.
Now, you will know what it is to truly serve the fatherland.
It is this inhumanity, however, that proves his undoing, because it's Candlewick himself, fully turning on his father, who delivers a knockout blow, and thus ends the Podesta, the same war he so glorifies. If it's the Podesta's cruelty that seals his fate, though, it's Geppetto's desire for atonement that saves him. Pinocchio ends up saving his father by sacrificing his own immortality, but the Blue Fairy intervenes once more, granting him one last chance at life. And as he struggles to wake, Geppetto says this to him.
I was trying to make you someone you were not. Don't be Carlo, or anyone else. Be exactly who you are.
He has learned that being a father isn't about molding your child to be some desirable form or another. It's about accepting your child for who they are and helping them to grow in their own way. And notice the words chosen here.
Then I will be Pinocchio. And you will be my papa. Will that do?
Not, I will be your son. I will be Pinocchio. He will be himself, and Geppetto will be his papa. In the epilogue, Pinocchio returns home and lives his life with his new family. One by one, though, they pass away. And soon with the march of time, Pinocchio is left alone. But this time, he's ready for it. We're told that he stepped into the world, and the world embraced him back. And the very last visual of the film, matching the first, is a pine cone hanging from a branch, the motif returning before it suddenly drops. Another life starting anew.